Hello, welcome to This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder. On this week's presentation, we take a look at the activities of Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa. One particular activity stands out, and that is his presentation to the National Assembly for the second reading of the Hire Purchase Bill, a bill that now empowers our farmers and other stakeholders within the agriculture sector, protecting them from unscrupulous acts by those persons offering hire purchase and other credit facilities to them for agricultural machinery and equipment. As you will hear in this edition of This Week in Agriculture, the bill sets out a number of protective measures that will protect our farmers and others within the agriculture sector. Also this past week, NARI began selling its cut roses, part of President Ali's Rose project to empower single-parent families. This is, of course, the first step along that phased rollout of that program. In this program, we just mentioned that cut roses are now being sold, so those persons selling roses, florists, individuals perhaps, those of you wishing to send a bouquet somewhere, you can contact NARI, as you will hear in this report. In the following week, in the coming week, we will be presenting a complete feature on the Rose Project and how it will impact you, single-parent families, and how you can cash in on this very lucrative business, a wealth-generating vehicle, if you like. Of course, Guyana imports millions of dollars annually in roses and other ingredients for those bouquets that are going around. And they can range from $2,000 to as much as $30,000 for a single arrangement. And so with this Rose Project, Guyana will be hoping to replace the imported roses with this locally grown variety. Some 20 different varieties of roses are being grown at NARI under very rigid conditions. This is necessary for commercial production of roses, as you will hear in that feature that we're producing for you in the coming week. So, stay tuned. We will be back after these messages.
The Ministry of Agriculture advises that persons desirous of importing animal products, such as meats, must first acquire a permit and/or no objection to do so from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority (GLDA). Prospective importers must fill out an application for import license form. This must be handed in to GLDA along with a quotation from the supplier of the products to be imported, as well as a certificate of origin of the commodity. Meat and meat products must be from approved countries, and in cases where this is not so, then that country must apply directly to the GLDA for a permission to export to Guyana. In this case, a risk assessment is then conducted by the GLDA in association with the Veterinary Public Health Unit of the Ministry of Health. At the time of the application to GLDA, the importer must also indicate his or her interest in this regard to the Veterinary Public Health Unit, which plays a critical role in determining whether the license to import will be granted or not. If the import is allowed, the importer is notified by the GLDA. A fee is payable before the permit is prepared and issued to the importer. It should be noted that meat or meat products imported without an import license will be seized and destroyed. For more information on this and other issues, contact the GLDA head office on 220-6556 or email glda1910@gmail.com. Visit our Facebook page and leave a comment.
In light of recent flooding and the lodging of floodwaters in some communities, the Ministry of Agriculture through the GLDA is warning of the dangers lurking in stagnant floodwaters. Leptospirosis is caused by bacteria that results in severe damage to the liver, kidneys, and other organs of both animals and humans. One risk factor includes walking or playing in floodwaters, especially floodwaters that have become stagnant. Leptospirosis is transmitted through the urine of infected rodents, livestock, and pets. The leptospira bacteria can enter the body of animals and humans through drinking, through cuts in the skin, or through mucous membranes in the eyes, nose, and mouth. Symptoms of leptospirosis in both animals and humans include fever, jaundice, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, loss of appetite, weakness, stiffness, and severe muscle pain. In light of the current rainy season and widespread flooding, livestock and pet owners are advised to implement good agricultural practices and, where possible, have your animals vaccinated against this disease immediately. A message from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Ministry of Agriculture. Farmers and the members of the public in general are being advised that tampering with drainage and irrigation structures in any way is prohibited under the Drainage and Irrigation Act. So too are practices that result in damage to access dams, such as using an inadequate length of tube to irrigate farmlands, resulting in erosion of the earthen dams. Also contrary to the Drainage and Irrigation Act is the practice of erecting structures or planting on government reserves. This will not be condoned. These reserves are to be clear at all times to provide access for the excavation of the channels. Livestock farmers should also be aware that they are liable for any damages caused by their cattle or swine to dams or reserves alongside D&I channels, as is the case when the animals cross these channels. Individuals wishing to erect bridges across D&I structures should first contact the NDIA before doing so. Those found guilty under the Act are liable to fines and imprisonment for up to 3 months. A message from the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority, Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture is warning members of the public that it is illegal to dump garbage of any kind near to or into drainage and irrigation waterways across the country. The NDIA, the agency tasked with the maintenance of drainage and irrigation in Guyana, has noted that there is an alarming increase in the incidence of garbage getting into D&I waterways and causing blockages in the first instance. But worse than that, the garbage that includes clothing, rotting carcasses, pieces of wood and metal gets past protective grills of the critical mobile and fixed pumps, resulting in damage to the pumps, which have to be taken out of service for repairs, placing communities at risk, especially during the rainy season. The Ministry of Agriculture notes that when this happens, millions have to be spent on repairs to the pumps and on clearing the canals of debris thrown there by irresponsible citizens. The ministry warns that rangers of the NDIA will be on the lookout for those engaging in this illegal practice. Persons caught will be made to face the full force of the law. A message from the NDIA, Ministry of Agriculture. The rainy season is here with a vengeance, and with it the forecast instances of flooding across the coastal plains, as well as interior locations. Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa and team have been busy this past week with physical checks in and around the city, ensuring that the pumps were working as they should. In the various regions, RDC officials have been out and about their respective regions, ensuring that channels were clear and pumps in operation. While flooding has been reported, residents have also reported that waters recede quickly once the rain subsides. We begin this week's review with news that the Ministry of Agriculture commenced the sale of fresh roses from President Dr. Irfan Ali's One Guyana Rose project, being managed by the National Agricultural Research and Extension Institute, NARI. The aim of the Rose project is an effort to create employment, thereby generating income for single-parent families. The roses are being grown at the NARI compound at Monrepo under highly controlled conditions, as is required for commercially grown varieties. After 8 months, the roses grown under shade houses are now ready for the market. Every year, millions of dollars are spent on imported roses and bouquets, a market that locals can now cash in on. The roses grown at Nari are of the same quality, if not better, than the imported varieties. Persons interested in purchasing the roses can contact Ms. Melissa Ferreira on 5730, Monday to Friday between the hours of 9 to 1600 hours. Also this past week, the Veterinary Board of Guyana, VBC, hosted an opening session starting the external consultations for the regulations on the licensing and registration for veterinarians and animal health assistants. In its efforts to provide better services to veterinary practitioners, the Veterinary Board of Guyana drafted 2 regulations, licensing and registration for veterinarians and animal health assistants, and are now in the process of conducting external consultations for the review of these regulations. The Veterinary Board of Guyana, Act 2003, governs the practice of veterinary medicine in Guyana, and the Vet Board, which was established in 2014, is responsible for enforcing this act. Agriculturalists nationwide are now able to make better investments to expand their production and productivity following the passage this past week of the Hire Purchase Bill 2020 in the National Assembly. Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Mahabir Anil Nandlal, while addressing the National Assembly, stated that the important piece of legislation will reform the hire purchase sector, providing the necessary protections for consumers. Speaking on the bill, Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa explained that farmers have been complaining about businesses selling farming inputs and implements at a high cost. This, he said, has forced a number of field men and women to pursue hire purchase and credit sales, a move that is unavoidable if they are to improve production and productivity through the use of these expensive but vital pieces of equipment and machinery. In beginning his presentation, the Agriculture Minister stressed that the bill that was before the House was one that faced intense scrutiny, with widespread consultations held with all stakeholders, taking on board amendments to 27 of the 30 clauses contained in the bill.
I want first of all to commend my colleague, Honorable Onij Waldron, for leading this committee, and we are here today with a bill that has seen 27 of the 30 clauses being amended, a bill that we had wide consultation with major companies, cooperation, and groups. And all those contributions has helped us today to bring to this assembly a modern bill, a bill that will help the future of our country. And Mr. Speaker, listening to the Honorable Rajkumar, I am very dumbfounded here today because he was a member of the committee. And for the first time, I'm hearing a proposal from the Honorable Rajkumar. And Mr. Speaker, like their coalition party, the PNC, probably they have learned all the tricks now. We are seeing they are saying us should cap interest rate. To cap interest rate is to put in price control, what they did in the 70s and 80s in this country, and when the PNC destroyed the entire private sector in our country and take up interest rate by 30 to 40%. That's the history of the PNC, and probably the AFC now have been learning very, very swiftly. So, Mr. Speaker, when you come here, let's come with the fact. We came here today with a bill that has the consensus of the opposition and the government and also all the stakeholders of this country. We came here today to pass a bill that will modernize the Guyana. Because, Mr. Speaker, today Guyana's economy continues to show positive growth and is among one of the fastest growing economy in the world. As a result of Guyana's fastest growing economy, we are seeing many investors who are interested in setting up businesses in Guyana, and our government has recognized that and has been exploring an array of investment opportunities aim at modernizing every sector in our economy. Mr. Speaker, the development and transformation of the sectors are already becoming evident, as we can see modern infrastructures and new businesses being established. As the government continues its attempt at stimulating the economy, Mr. Speaker, it is necessary, therefore, that the laws are updated and modernized in keeping with Guyana's dynamic and diversified economy. Mr. Speaker, as business booms, it is necessary that there are updated legislations that protect both businesses and consumers. And in that case, in that stead, Mr. Speaker, hire purchase, credit sales, or conditional sales agreement constitute a large portion of retail trade in Guyana. Specifically, hire purchase is one of the preferred purchasing options by many persons to afford household items and equipment, to improve their standard of living and quality of life. Hire purchasing is also done by many of our small businesses, agro-processors, and farmers.
The second reading and passage of the Hire Purchase Bill came after it was referred to a special select committee of Parliament that comprised both government and opposition members of the House. The committee published the contents of the bill and sought input from members of the general public and relevant stakeholders before being finalized and presented for the second reading. According to Minister Mustafa, the Hire Purchase Bill is a critical piece of legislation that will create a level playing field for both businesses and the consumer.
Mr. Speaker, the Hire Purchase Bill is a critical piece of legislation, given that Guyana's hire purchase law need updating, and there is a dire need to create a level playing field where both the vendors and buyers is adequately protected. Mr. Speaker, coming out of the process in the Special Select Committee, as I said, is a bill that all of Guyana will benefit. This bill will bring tremendous protection to the ordinary citizen engaged in such transaction. As it stands, buyers make monthly payment towards the purchase price. And I want to say to the Honorable Member, Mr. Rajkumar, that when the price are displayed, the buyers have an opportunity for themselves to know both the price for the goods, and they will make that decision. So we will not impose government control on the private sector like what the PNC government did in the 70s so that our country can go backwards. We have a country that is moving. We have an economy that is moving, and we have the fastest growing economy in the world. That's where we are today. So we will not be a government to go back from our progress, what happened to our country from 2015 to 2020. Comrade, Mr. Speaker, what we have an economy, as I said, that is booming. Today we are the envy of not only the Caribbean, but the world. And not only of oil and gas, Mr. Speaker, but in all the sectors in our country, we are seeing progress. You call it, and bills like these will stimulate investment, will stimulate progress, and make the small person, the small farmers, the small miners move up and improve their life. Mr. Speaker, under this hire purchase bill, there are many recommendations in it where it will protect, as I said, both the buyers and the seller. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, we have seen a number, and my colleague alluded to it, the Competitions and Consumer Affairs Commission has received numerous complaints valued at millions of dollars involving hire purchase transactions. These complaints are wide in evidence a variety of trade malpractice due to the absence of hire purchase legislation. And today, we are here. We heard since 1938, a bill like this was passed in the United Kingdom. And we are the last in the Caribbean, according to my colleague, to pass and modernize this bill. This shows the government's intention in modernizing our country and move our country to progress. This bill is important to all households and specifically, Mr. Speaker, and you had your chance from 2015 to 2020. You had your chance from 2015 to 2020, never made an attempt. This was a commitment. This was a commitment by the PPP civic government. This was a commitment by the former Minister of Trade, now the President of our country, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali.
Speaking directly to how the bill will positively affect the agriculture sector, Minister Mustafa stressed that it will allow farmers and others in the agriculture sector to invest, knowing that their investment will be protected.
The agriculture sector, since a large number of farmers seeks to enter into hire purchase and credit sales to purchase farm inputs and farm implements such as tractors, bulldozers, and combine, etc. In many instances, they complain bitterly of unscrupulous owners and sellers of farm implement. This bill will now aid to safeguard the farmers of our country. This bill will aid to safeguard the miners of our country. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, will provide protection of consumers, hirers against immediate repossession in event of default by hirers. That is, immediate seizure of item will now be abolished. And we know that this is a history in our country where many farmers would have taken implement and equipment and hire purchase agreement, and if they fail 1 month, to pay the installment, then the buyer, the hirers, the sellers can come and repossess it. Now, full disclosure of terms of the hire purchase or credit sales transaction to the consumer either before or at the time of signing the hire purchase agreement. This will also end the exploitation of buyers by sellers, that is, stopping the harsh and unconscionable terms in this agreement. Mr. Speaker, this bill is particularly supported since its enactment will have an impact on the agriculture sector. Farmers often use many different types of equipment to improve their production. These are expensive but necessary investment which allow them to remain productive. This bill will allow our farmers to confidently invest in high-value assets to improve their production, as hire purchase will now be seen by many farmers as a financing solution which is safe and suitable for expanding the agribusinesses. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to give an example. If a farmer buy a combine harvester for $10 million on hire purchase, he signed a contract with clauses he could not possibly understand due to the legal language. Over the years, the farmer has been honoring his commitment and making payments for that harvester. However, due to heavy rainfall or other problems, he lost a section of his crop and could not make his payment or meet his commitment. Mr. Speaker, currently, if you default on any single payment, the seller can forfeit all the previous payment and repossess the item. And in most cases, this is what happened. Going back to my example, the seller repossesses the combine and then resells it to another farmer without giving the first farmer any money he would have already paid. This bill will abolish that. That's the protection I am talking about. And that's the protection we are protecting, the productive sector in our country. Mr. Speaker, as I said, this bill will help the farmers also to have payments that they have been making for machinery and other equipment to be as it is. And I want to give another example here. Farmers, when they incur costs for these machinery, they are being told that the machinery is field ready. What is field ready? Many times farmers complain that they expend more money to make the machine field ready. For example, a combine harvester, a farmer would have to pay almost $400,000 to $600,000 extra to build shield to pick up the extra paddy that falls in the field. This bill will help the farmers to save those money. So this bill will help the entire productive sector, likewise the miners, the small miners in our country. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, persons buying vehicles and hire purchase will be protected by a note made on the registration by GRA. This means we will all know when a vehicle is on hire purchase, so there is no double sale of the same vehicle, which is an everyday occurrence affecting the ordinary man in the street. Mr. Speaker, we always punish the defaulters, but never reward those that comply with the rules. An encouragement to buyer consumer to make payments early where possible is in this bill, as we heard the Honorable Minister said, that there is a 5% rebate on early payment. So this is law now in our country. Mr. Speaker, this legislation will provide much needed protection for both consumers and suppliers. When a consumer purchases a goods, purchase an item on hire purchase, it will now be the law that the correct information regarding the location of the goods is provided to the supplier. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the enactment of the hire purchase bill will address the issue faced by consumers and provide them with a legal channel for redress. Hire purchase consumer will not now worry less after losing goods and item they would have purchased before this bill. This legislation is indeed timely. This legislation will provide much needed protection, as I said earlier, to the person involved in hire purchase. This legislation will modernize our country. This legislation is in keeping with our government commitment to the people of our country, not only to build infrastructure, not only to improve other sectors, but to modernize the entire system in our country where every strata of society will benefit. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the Honorable House.
In light of recent flooding and the lodging of floodwaters in some communities, the Ministry of Agriculture through the GLDA is warning of the dangers lurking in stagnant floodwaters. Leptospirosis is caused by bacteria that results in severe damage to the liver, kidneys, and other organs of both animals and humans. One risk factor includes walking or playing in floodwaters, especially floodwaters that have become stagnant. Leptospirosis is transmitted through the urine of infected rodents, livestock, and pets. The leptospirobacteria can enter the body of animals and humans through drinking, through cuts in the skin, or through mucous membranes in the eyes, nose, and mouth. Symptoms of leptospirosis in both animals and humans include fever, jaundice, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, loss of appetite, weakness, stiffness, and severe muscle pain. In light of the current rainy season and widespread flooding, livestock and pet owners are advised to implement good agricultural practices and, where possible, have your animals vaccinated against this disease immediately. A message from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Agriculture is warning members of the public that it is illegal to dump garbage of any kind near to or into drainage and irrigation waterways across the country. The NDIA, the agency tasked with the maintenance of drainage and irrigation in Guyana, has noted that there is an alarming increase in the incidence of garbage getting into DNI waterways and causing blockages in the first instance. But worse than that, the garbage that includes clothing, rotting carcasses, pieces of wood and metal gets past protection protective grills of the critical mobile and fixed pumps, resulting in damage to the pumps, which have to be taken out of service for repairs, placing communities at risk, especially during the rainy season. The Ministry of Agriculture notes that when this happens, millions have to be spent on repairs to the pumps and on clearing the canals of debris thrown there by irresponsible citizens. The ministry warns that rangers of the NDIA will be on the lookout for those engaging in this illegal practice. Persons caught will be made to face the full force of the law. A message from the NDIA Ministry of Agriculture. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of This Week in Agriculture, a presentation of the Communications Unit, Ministry of Agriculture. I'm your producer and host, Christopher Holder. This Week in Agriculture is produced for television by Matrix Video Productions and Advertising, based in East Berbice. Until next time then, be good to yourselves and to each other.